Have you ever wondered what the loudest sound is? In 1893, the Norwegian painter Edvard Munch created one of the most recognized paintings in history, the scream. Screams are sound waves that propagate through material mediums, such as earth, water, or air itself. An interesting way, since we're talking about sound, to classify them based on their intensity is through the decibel scale. This scale starts at 0, which is the lowest sound intensity that a human can hear, and since it's a logarithmic scale, each additional 10 decibels means that the sound intensity, for example, which is what we're analyzing, has become 10 times greater. The ambient sound of a very quiet room, like the one I'm recording in now, registers about 20 decibels. This is 100 times more intense than the beginning of the scale, 0. Above 85 decibels, we begin to suffer irreparable hearing damage if we're exposed to that same sound for a long time. Just for comparison, this is the same sound intensity as traffic on a busy highway, which can easily register 85 decibels. The engine of a jet plane, 100 meters away, can reach 110 decibels. Above 120, we risk instant hearing loss. But all these sounds I've mentioned are absolutely nothing compared to the loudest sound ever recorded in history. The year is 1883, and we're in the Krakatoa Archipelago in Indonesia. In the years leading up to 1883, seismic activity in the Krakatoa Archipelago was already quite intense. There were earthquakes that could be felt as far away as Australia. But on August 25, 1883, Krakatoa entered continuous activity, and explosions could be heard every 10 minutes. Sailors who were up to 20 kilometers away reported pumice stones, a common type of volcanic rock, falling on their ships. These stones were up to 10 centimeters in diameter. On August 27th, four major explosions occurred. Truly major, because each one could, by itself, generate tsunamis of about 30 meters high. The third explosion, at 10:02 a.m., is often credited with probably generating the second loudest sound ever recorded in history. It was intense enough to be heard 3,110 kilometers away in Perth, Australia, and 4,800 kilometers away on islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean, where locals thought the sound they had just heard was actually the sound of cannons from nearby ships that, for some reason, had gone into battle. It is estimated that 160 kilometers from the volcano, this explosion generated a sound that reached 180 decibels. Just for comparison, that's about 1,000,000 times more intense than someone blowing a whistle right next to your ear. The energy released by this explosion is estimated to be about 4 Tsar bombs, the largest nuclear device ever tested in human history. The Tsar bomb broke windows in cities 900 kilometers away. But nothing surpasses the fourth and final explosion, which launched volcanic ash into the atmosphere at an altitude of approximately 80 kilometers. This is the loudest sound ever recorded in history. The shockwave resulting from this colossal eruption traveled away from Krakatoa at an incredible 1,086 kilometers per hour. With an approximate intensity of 310 decibels, the fourth explosion of Krakatoa could be heard clearly more than 5,000 kilometers away. It burst the eardrums of sailors who were sailing within a radius of 64 kilometers. The shockwave resulting from the fourth explosion of Krakatoa was so intense that it could be measured on barographs around the entire world, effectively circling the Earth 3.5 times, and being measured again with each pass. But the next day, August 28, 1883, the Krakatoa volcano fell silent. When the eruption stopped, less than 30% of the original island still existed. Even in silence, the volcano that had generated the loudest sound ever recorded in history would continue to have consequences for the entire Earth. In the year following the Krakatoa eruption, summer temperatures recorded in practically the entire northern hemisphere dropped by about 1.2 degrees Celsius. The climate became chaotic and only returned to normal 5 years later, in 1888. Extremely distant cities, such as Los Angeles and San Diego in the United States, received record amounts of rain between July 1883 and June 1884. The cause of this record amount of rain is precisely the Krakatoa eruption. Another consequence of the eruption was the increased concentration of sulfuric acid in the upper atmosphere, around the entire globe, which increased the amount of sunlight that clouds reflected back into space. With more light being reflected than normal, the planet as a whole cooled. Due to the high amount of volcanic ash thrown into the upper atmosphere by the Krakatoa eruption, the skies around the entire planet became darker. This ash was the right size to block more red light in the atmosphere. One consequence of this was that for months after the eruption, the moon had a bluish or often greenish appearance. These ashes also created unique and absurdly red sunsets in the skies around the world. This brings us back to Edvard Munch's painting The Scream. In 2004, a team of astronomers suggested that the absurdly red sky in the painting is actually a consequence of the volcanic ash thrown into the atmosphere by the Krakatoa eruption. The numbers, dates, and locations match. However, this is disputed by art historians, who claim that Munch was an expressionist. In other words, he didn't necessarily need to paint pictures and landscapes as he saw them in the real world. Still, thinking about the possibility that the eruption of an extremely distant volcano may have inspired the creation of one of the most famous paintings in history is fascinating. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.